There's a silence that screams louder than words, a silence so heavy it presses on your chest late at night when you're trying to sleep. It's the silence that follows a man walking out of your life. No texts, no calls, not even a breadcrumb of attention. And yet, something tells you it's not over. But how can that be? He's acting like you don't even exist. So here's the question I want you to carry with you. What if silence isn't closure, but a strategy? What if his absence isn't about moving on, but about maintaining power, control, obsession in disguise? Let me take you on a journey where we strip the mask off this silence, where we read between the lines of what he isn't saying, and where, by the end of this, you'll not only see the truth clearly, you'll walk away holding your self-worth in full command, no longer waiting for crumbs from a man who underestimated your silence far more than you ever underestimated his. Because I promise you, his silence does not mean he's over you. It means he's counting on you not knowing your own value. But that ends tonight. Think back. Think to the moment the messages started getting shorter, the calls less frequent, the excitement dulled. It was subtle at first, like watching a sunset fade second by second. Not enough to panic, but enough to feel that something was slipping. Then, all at once, the silence came. Maybe he ghosted you. Maybe he gave some vague excuse. Maybe he even said, "I just need some space to think." And what did you do? You overanalyzed. You replayed conversations in your mind like a broken record. You checked your phone more times than you'll ever admit. You wondered what you said, what you didn't say, what you should have done differently. But here's what most women don't realize when that silence sets in. A man's silence can be louder than any confession. Because silence is not absence. It's a tactic. It's not the end. It's a power play. And often, it's not peace he's seeking. It's control. Let me tell you a story that still haunts me when I think about the games people play with the hearts of those they once claimed to care about. Her name was Alina. Beautiful, smart, strong, but soft in all the right ways. She loved a man who made her feel like the center of his universe until he didn't. It was gradual. The compliments faded, the calls became obligations, and then he was gone. No goodbye, no closure, just silence. Weeks passed. She was wrecked. She deleted and reinstalled messaging apps a dozen times. She played tough with friends, but cried into her pillow every night. Still, he never reached out. But then, months later, like a ghost, he reappeared. Not with an apology, not with remorse, but with a casual, "Hey stranger." Alina felt her heart leap. But something had changed. In that silence, she had woken up. She had read every self-help book, journaled through her pain, and realized that the person she missed wasn't real. She missed the version he sold her, not the man who abandoned her when she needed him most. And when she didn't respond, do you know what he said next? "Whoa, you've changed." That's right. He didn't miss her. He missed the version of her that would have dropped everything to answer. the version that would have clung to his crumbs like they were a feast. Don't be fooled. A man who truly moves on doesn't circle back. A man who is truly indifferent doesn't check your stories, doesn't like your pictures months later, doesn't ask your friends how you're doing when he thinks you won't find out. When he goes silent, but he lingers in the shadows, that's not peace. That's obsession wearing the costume of indifference. And the more you respond to his silence with your own, the more obsessed he becomes. Because let me explain something. Men don't always miss you. They miss how you made them feel about themselves. When you stop making them feel desired, needed, superior, when your silence reflects dignity, not desperation, that's when the panic sets in. That's when they start asking, wait, did I really lose her? Now I want to take you deeper into the psychology of male silence. Because here's a truth that will change how you see everything. Men often weaponize distance to gauge control. They pull away, not always to disappear, but to see how quickly you'll chase. They want to know how long it takes before you break the silence, how easily you'll crack under the pressure of wondering. This is not about maturity. This is about ego. This is about a man who confuses being desired with being valued. A man who uses silence to confirm he still has a grip on your emotions. Let's break it down. When a man goes silent, it creates a vacuum. Nature and your heart hates vacuums. You feel compelled to fill it, to ask questions, to reach out, to just check in. But every time you do, you train him. You show him that his silence gets a reaction. And for some men, any reaction is a win, even if it's heartbreak. The great Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. I'll take it a step further. Any man who can silence you into chaos becomes your puppeteer. And you, queen, are no puppet. Let's talk about your power now, because silence cuts both ways." You see, there's another kind of silence, one that isn't born of confusion or pain, but of clarity, of peace, of self-respect. It's the silence of a woman who has stopped trying to prove her worth. A woman who realizes, my energy is a privilege, not a currency to bargain with. You want to know what truly makes a man obsessed. Not your texts, not your pictures, not even your presence. It's your absence, when it's rooted in confidence. When he looks and you're no longer looking back. When he speaks into the void and it stays quiet. When he expects you to react and you don't. That's when the grip of his ego starts to shatter. Because now his silence doesn't bring power, it brings fear. Fear that someone else will see what he failed to value. Fear that you've found someone who treats you the way he never did. Fear that he was the one who lost. Let me take you to a real moment in history. Napoleon Bonaparte, known for his conquests, his ego, his obsessive pursuit of control, had one great obsession, Josephine, even when he divorced her, even when he married someone else, even when he led armies across Europe. He couldn't let her go. Do you know why? Because after their breakup, Josephine never begged, never wrote, never pleaded. She thrived. And Napoleon, who could command nations, found himself haunted by the one woman who no longer fed his ego. That, my friend, is the power of silence fueled by self-worth. So if you're sitting there thinking, but if I don't reach out, what if he forgets me? Let me remind you, men, don't forget women who walk away with grace. They forget the ones who beg for their value to be seen. If he's silent and you respond with dignity, you become the woman he replays in his mind like a song he can't stop humming. Not because you begged, not because you clung, but because you disappeared with your self-worth intact. He may never admit it. But trust me, he's watching, he's wondering, he's regretting. And the more you let go, the more he holds on silently. Because that's the curse of the man who lets go of a woman who finally realized her worth. He watches her glow from the shadows he created. There is a moment, often subtle, always profound, when a woman finally chooses herself. It's not loud. It's not performative. It doesn't come with a grand announcement or a poetic text declaring closure. It happens in the quiet. In the morning, she wakes up and doesn't check her phone hoping for his name. In the evening, she doesn't spiral into what if scenarios. At night, she breathes fully. For the first time in what feels like forever, her silence is not filled with longing. It is filled with freedom, and that's when the shift happens, not just within her, but within him, because silence is no longer a game he controls. It's now a mirror he cannot look into, because in that mirror is a version of her he never expected to see. A woman who has nothing left to prove, nothing left to plead, and everything to reclaim. But here's the irony. This silence, her silence, begins to haunt him. The very silence he weaponized now becomes his punishment. You see, most men don't fear losing you when they leave. They fear the moment you realize they're not worth chasing. Let me tell you about Leah. Leah loved deeply the way women who are truly present in their hearts do. She believed in second chances, in seeing the good even when it was buried under 100 red flags. She dated a man who played silence like an instrument whenever things got too emotional, too real. Too honest, he'd vanish. No explanation, no apology, just absence. And Lee, she always filled the space. Texts that went unread, voice notes that never got a reply, tears behind closed doors, followed by justifications to friends like, "Hay's just going through something," until one day she stopped. Not because she suddenly stopped loving him, but because she finally started loving herself. She didn't block him. She didn't send a final message. She didn't beg him to see what he was throwing away. She just went quiet. But this time, not in pain, in power. And 3 weeks later, guess what happened? "Hey you, I miss us." He didn't miss her. He missed the access. He missed the comfort of knowing she was still there, orbiting his indifference. And Leah, who would have once melted at that message, smiled, put her phone down, and continued building a life that no longer centered him. Because here's the truth. They don't tell you men rarely come back because they've changed. They come back because they expect you haven't. They bank on your softness. They expect your compassion to override your boundaries. They hope your empathy will eclipse your evolution. But when you go silent with strength, when your absence radiates wholeness, not heartbreak, it forces them to face something far more terrifying than losing you themselves. You were the mirror. You reflected their potential, their light, their shadow. You showed them love they never earned, but always expected. And when you remove that mirror, they're left staring into emptiness. Not yours, theirs. There's something else you must understand, something few people dare to say out loud. Some men use silence not just to punish you, but to heal their own ego. It's a twisted logic, but it's real. They ghost you because they can't handle the truth you reflect back. They vanish to convince themselves they're still in control. They go quiet, hoping your anxiety will prove they still matter. But deep down, they're hoping you'll reach out, not because they care, but because they need proof that they're still needed. Your reaction feeds their illusion of power. Your chasing becomes a balm to their wounded masculinity. And if you don't respond, if your silence stretches longer than theirs, if you seem okay, maybe even better, without them, that's when their inner world starts crumbling, because they never anticipated that the woman they took for granted could be the same woman who now lives with peace that no longer includes them. Let's go back in time. There was a philosopher named Seneca, a Stoic master of self-discipline and emotional detachment. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And that's what this is about. How much of your life will you waste wondering if his silence means he's done, when in truth, he's waiting for you to flinch? Don't waste another minute decoding a man who communicates through absence. Because a man who loves you will speak in presence, in consistency, in effort. Silence is not love. It's confusion at best, cowardice at worst. And yet, he's still watching, still waiting, still hoping the echo of his silence will reach you louder than his actual voice ever could. Let's get even more honest. What if I told you that the real reason he's still obsessed isn't because he loved you deeply, but because he never expected you to walk away quietly? He expected a storm. He expected tears, rage, endless texts. He expected drama. But instead, you gave him nothing. And that's when he realized the truth. You were never the chaotic one. You were the calm, the anchor, the place his fractured ego rested safely. And now that you're gone, he's adrift. Not because you completed him, but because your love was his escape from facing his emptiness. Now he's left staring into a void that your silence made unavoidable. Because when a woman who once loved loudly goes quiet, it's not apathy, it's awakening. So here's what I want you to sit with. If his silence is making you question your worth, then let your silence remind him of yours. You do not need to break your peace to understand his chaos. You do not need to chase closure from someone who communicates through absence. And you do not need to doubt your value simply because a man who couldn't handle your depth chose to hide behind silence. His obsession. It isn't in the things he says. It's in the things he doesn't. The way he lingers in your digital world, the way he casually resurfaces when he senses your detachment, the way his name still finds its way into conversations through mutual friends or random messages. That's not coincidence. That's a man trying to re-enter a door he slammed shut, only to realize you've since changed the locks. There's something intoxicating about a woman who no longer reacts. Her silence doesn't ask for answers. It declares independence. She doesn't cry to be heard. She lets her absence become the loudest sound in the room. And men like him, men who confuse ego with emotion, don't know what to do with a woman who no longer responds on cue. They don't know how to grieve a ghost that haunts them by thriving. They don't know how to beg for a second chance without admitting they squandered the first. So they stay quiet, watching, wishing, hoping, but never growing. Because obsession isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the silence, in the glances they never send, in the calls they never make, in the thoughts they never confess, but can't escape. There's a breaking point in every love story where the energy shifts completely. Not with fanfare, not with a final confrontation. But in the moment, she decides to stop fighting for someone who's perfectly fine, watching her drown in uncertainty. That's when the obsession flips. Not hers, his. Because the moment you stop playing by his unspoken rules, the moment your silence stops being a question and starts becoming an answer, that's when he starts losing the game he thought he controlled. He silenced you thinking you would beg. He distanced himself thinking you'd chase. He withheld affection thinking you'd work harder for breadcrumbs. But you didn't. You stopped calling. You stopped wondering. You stopped showing up to play a game you never agreed to in the first place. And in that stillness, something powerful happened. You became unforgettable. Not because of how much you tried to prove your worth, but because of how confidently you stopped. Let's talk about the real reason some men become obsessed with the women they ignore. It's not about love. It's about control. It's about familiarity. It's about their illusion of superiority being shattered by your unbothered grace. Men like this operate on predictable cycles. They love, bomb, then pull away. They get close, then vanish. They offer hope, then retract it, all to test how much you'll tolerate in the name of connection. And every time you respond to that inconsistency with more patience, more giving, more hope, you fuel their belief that they can return whenever they like. But the second you no longer play the role of the endlessly understanding woman, the second your silence begins to taste like peace rather than punishment, they panic. Why? Because they never imagined you'd outgrow needing their validation. Let me give you a glimpse inside his mind. Not the romanticized version, but the raw, unfiltered psychology of a man who misread your value. He's not reaching out. He's not calling, but he's watching. He's checking your stories. He's reading your captions. He's listening for your name in mutual circles. And if you've blocked him, he's finding other ways. Fake accounts, friends' phones, random coincidences that aren't coincidences. He may never say it aloud, but the silence he once used as a weapon now torments him, because silence, when reversed, becomes the mirror he cannot look into. Every time you don't respond, every time you smile in that photo without him, every time you speak confidently without mentioning his name, he hears it, not in words, but in absence. And that silence whispers the one thing his ego can't handle. She doesn't need me anymore. Let's revisit something crucial. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening internally. In your silence, you rediscover pieces of yourself he never saw. In your stillness, you remember the sound of your own voice without his opinions distorting it. You remember that you were someone before him, and that person didn't need to shrink to fit his inconsistency. And guess what? He knows it. Deep down, whether he admits it or not, he knows that the version of you he silenced was the version he took for granted. And the version that emerged from that silences is someone he can no longer manipulate. That's where the obsession begins. Not with your body, not with your attention, but with your evolution. Because when you grow past needing him, he becomes obsessed with the power he can no longer touch. There's a quote I want you to sit with. It's from Rumi, the mystic poet who understood the language of the soul better than most. Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure. You were never meant to stay wounded in the waiting room of his silence. You were meant to rise, to see that his silence wasn't rejection. It was redirection. To come back home to yourself. And when you do, he notices, the woman who once chased is now unbothered. The one who waited is now moving forward. And the one who used to need his words now doesn't even notice his silence. That transformation is louder than any text he could send. It echoes in every corner of his mind, long after he tries to convince himself he's over you. Because here's another secret. Men don't always realize what they lost the moment you walk away. They realize it in the silence that follows when you don't come back. Let me tell you a story that proves this. It's about a woman named Isla. She dated a man who mastered the art of distance. Every time she got close, he would retreat. Every time she needed emotional intimacy, he would grow cold. He never said it, but his silence screamed, "Love me, but not too much." Isla hit a wall. She realized she was having conversations alone, fighting for something he had already emotionally exited from. So she left. Not dramatically, not emotionally. She just stopped calling, stopped explaining, stopped waiting. Months passed. And then the inevitable, he reached out. "I've been thinking about you. I miss us. No one understands me the way you did." But this time, Isla was different. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She was free. She responded with a kindness that unsettled him. not because she wanted him back, but because she no longer needed closure. Her silence had done the healing, and him. He became obsessed with a version of her he could no longer access. Not because she had changed who she was, but because she finally became someone who would no longer tolerate who he was. This is the pattern. He will miss you. He will obsess over you, but he will never admit it. Why? Because to admit it means admitting he was wrong. It means admitting he lost something he thought he could return to any time. But you're not a revolving door. You're not a temporary comfort. You are not the woman who exists in emotional limbo, waiting for a man to figure himself out. You are the storm he never prepared for, the peace he never nurtured, the silence he never expected would change you. Now hear this clearly. You do not owe him a response just because he's finally feeling the weight of your absence. Let your silence continue to speak. Let your boundaries remain unshaken. Because what he's obsessing over now isn't just the loss of a relationship. It's the loss of access to your energy, your softness, your validation. You see, obsession isn't always about wanting someone back. Sometimes it's about losing the emotional supply they took for granted. And when he sits in the silence he created, when he reaches into the void and finds no echo, that's when the regret will begin. Let me leave you with this. The strongest thing you'll ever do in love is walk away from what doesn't value you. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with silence born of self-respect. Because when he said nothing, you learned everything. And when you responded with grace instead of desperation, you reclaimed your power. Let that be your truth. Not every love story ends with closure. Some end with silence. But the most beautiful ones, they begin again with you.